to legalize Bitcoin peer-to-peer transactions. I did my regular advanced search on Google for Bitcoin articles written in the past 24 hours. Today is June 11th, and this article was written today. I will provide you the link to both this article and the search that I do using Google's advanced search. I found the article on the Coin Telegraph, Future of Money. I read this page because they don't put pop-ups like CoinDesk does. Many articles appear on the first page, and I click on them without realizing it's CoinDesk, and I get a pop-up and I close the window. I don't read the article. So don't waste your time opening CoinDesk articles. If you do a search and see that the article appears on CoinDesk, just skip it. The author of today's article is Alan Scott. He has a caricature drawing of the president, Medvedev or whatever his name is, and Putin, Vladimir Putin, the prime minister. Two thugs in a thugocracy. When I read the history of the Russian leaders, it was clear that it's an oligarchy run by tough guys like the mafia. Putin was in the KGB. And the first thing he did when he became president, after Yeltsin and Gorbachev, is he undid as many of the reforms as he could, because he felt that splitting up the Soviet Union was a terrible mistake. He wants to put it all back together again. He poisoned two leaders. In the Ukraine, Viktor something, Chenkov or something like that, I can't remember his name, disfigured his face. He survived, but he poisoned the president of Georgia, and he died. I think the name is Yushchenkov in the Ukraine. Viktor Yushchenko. Bitcoin came out in thought in 2005, in a white paper in 2009, and most of the world that knows about it today learned about it in March, April of 2013. That's when I heard about it, March 28th, 2013, from Stefan Molyneux. And for 3 weeks I studied it intensely. I felt I knew more than most people about Bitcoin, but there is so much to know. You need to know how to avoid being hacked by skilled hackers. And the more valuable these coins become, the more important that will be. So that's what I'm studying today. But I also want to know what's going on politically, because there is a big risk if governments decide to kill or over-regulate Bitcoin. Government has proven itself to be an obstacle to progress. Oligarchs trying to maintain control over everything so that they wind up with everything, all the wealth in the world, and we the people wind up with shit. And a lot of people are recognizing this and awakening to that fact and joining the revolution to overturn them. And so a war has broken out, undeclared, us against them. We have 7.3 billion, and if everybody knows what's going on, they're finished. Bitcoin is a very important part of it because it's decentralized. It's not anonymous because they make you give so much information, they know exactly who's buying the coins. An interesting article I read recently is about dark wallet. I think everybody should look that term up and read about it, because these guys, Amir Taki and another guy who dropped out of law school, I can't remember his name, but he dropped out of law school and said he's going to become a revolutionary because he sees the need to dispose of these pricks that are in control of everything, because the scale is being heavily weighted in their favor. And we are winding up with less and less and less every year. They're forming monopolies and charging an arm and a leg for the basics. They have 147 companies that control all the wealth and take 60% of the profits from the 43,000 companies on the capital market. They're mostly banks, all owned by a core of greedy people who think that we are their slaves. But as the word is passed around, we gain ground. And what we want is a fair system, and we cannot have it if power is concentrated into the hands of a few. And they're trying to yoke us all into one United Nations so that we have nothing to say about what they decide. And what they will decide is to take more and more. There's no limit to human greed. Medvedev, or whatever his name is, and Putin are not our friends. But there's an Arab expression that says, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Putin opposes this power center, but he also cooperates with them for world domination. A short time ago, Putin said that Bitcoin was a CIA creation. The CIA is not clever enough to come up with anything this ingenious. The CIA certainly would not come up with a cryptocurrency that does not involve this handful of people that own and control everything. From what I can see, the CIA has only one modus operandi, and that's to run a drill, set off an explosion, kill thousands of innocent people, and blame it on a fictional terrorist group. They run that same program over and over again, and the people are beginning to catch on. More and more whistleblowers are turning on their despotic rulers because they see no future in a one-world government run by them. There will be no poverty known by mankind greater than the one we're going to experience if they succeed. Power corrupts, and they have absolute power, and they are absolutely corrupt to the core. I recall 2 countries that came out and said they're outlawing Bitcoin: Thailand and Russia. Here a technology has been developed which allows us to send money over the internet. When this happened with mail, it was great. People could send a message to each other, get it instantly, and there was no charge. That is a marvelous advance. And now we have it for money, because of the work of one person who doesn't like to use his real name, so he uses a pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto. Some believe that his real name is Nick Szabo, S-Z-A-B-O, because he has the intellect to create this thing, Bitcoin. I heard Jeffrey Tucker say that Bitcoin is both a transfer system and a currency. We've never had that before, those two wrapped up in one. Thailand did a reversal, and they now embrace Bitcoin. I guess they figured it out, that there will be 2 types of countries in the future: those who move into the future with Bitcoin and those who lag behind without it. So Max Keiser had a talk with somebody in Russia and convinced them to consider legalizing it. And it's good for Russia and the Russian people. But as each country legalizes Bitcoin, and I think just about everybody today has legalized it. There were 7 that outlawed it, and Russia was 1. Now there are 6. I know that Vietnam is 1. I think Bolivia and Ecuador are 2 more. I did a video about it, and I listed all 7. So now we're down to 6. And the article says Russia's central bank may soon allow and regulate transactions in Bitcoin, according to a leading Moscow newspaper. Change in attitude. In a possibly dramatic change of attitude toward cryptocurrency, the Russian central bank may soon allow peer-to-peer transactions in Bitcoin, as well as other operations with cryptocurrencies, according to Izvestia, one of Russia's leading news publications. The central bank has historically been more open to Bitcoin than Russia's Ministry of Finance. Next week, they will meet with financial market representatives to discuss how to approach cryptocurrency as a whole in Russia. Now, I have to point out to you that Russia's central bank was set up and is owned by the same people who own and control 178 central banks around the world, all yoked under the Bank for International Settlements, BIS. It's the same group of people that have their octopus tentacles in 178 countries at the core of the financial system. That's how deep-rooted this cancer is that has to be eradicated, because it has already metastasized. According to a source close to the central bank, it is, quote, very likely, unquote, that the regulator may be in fact a proponent of cryptocurrency as, quote, the attitude of the central bank towards Bitcoin has shifted in the past year, unquote. The insider also believes that the central bank could legalize and regulate some operations involving Bitcoin, particularly peer-to-peer transactions and settlement payments between individuals. Bitcoin is a very important development for all countries and for all economies. Money must move freely, without impedance by banks and governments. Capital must be safe, and it is not because of the thugocracies and the totalitarian governments like the USA and the UN. It has become a totalitarian government. They are trying to yoke all nations of the world under one command, and that's the UN. And we must oppose this. It's not good for anything. It's not good for business. With oligarchs and thugs in control, capital is not safe anywhere. When you destroy capital, there goes the economy. There go all the jobs. Government is not the solution. Government is always the problem. Handing power to a government is suicide, because in no time they're corrupt. They are corrupt on day one, and they get worse every minute. And communist governments like Russia, China, and the USA are particularly worse. The people have nothing whatsoever to say about any legislation. The people do not pick the candidates that serve in office. They're appointed, just like they are in the Politburo. Gorbachev changed that, and Putin changed it back. Putin doesn't want democratic rule, and neither does China, and the USA is the same. Those who control and own the USA don't want it to be a free system. They want it to be a communist system, and they are in control. And we have already seen the experiments run on that, and they were all failures. Cuba remains communist, and the people there make an average of $19 a month. $19 a month. And a famous scientist in Russia, Grebennikov, he discovered anti-gravity properties in insects because he was an entomologist, and he built an anti-gravity device. He discovered structural cavity effects, SCE. His salary was $24 a month at the time he died. What did he die of? The anti-gravity properties created a lot of problems for the human body. Joints ached and that sort of thing. He lived to be in his 70s. I think he was 74. I did some videos on it. Just type in Grebennikov, Viktor Grebennikov. You can search the internet also. Next paragraph, overcoming obstacles. In January, the Federal Supervision Agency for Information Technologies and Communications, Roskomnadzor in Russian, blocked access to at least 5 Bitcoin-related websites in accordance with the ruling of the Nevyansky Municipal Court. It is not the people who need to have their hands tied. It is government. And whenever you see that government is tying the hands of the people and restricting their behavior while they do anything they want, you know that the world is upside down. Russia is a vast country, and it would pay huge benefits if it was broken up into 1,000 little countries. China is a huge country, and they force the people at gunpoint to remain in their communist system, and those people need to be set free. And I would like to see China break up into at least 58 countries to start with: Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Heilongjiang, Shandong, Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, Guangdong, Hubei, Mongolia, Jiangxi, Guangxi, Xiamen, and dozens others. And in America, 50 countries, which are now states. They are far, far better off without the federal government. The Federal Reserve alone drains every state. And this money is paying interest on money they created on a ledger. Hundreds of millions of dollars every day drained from states. That money could be used to provide every retiree with $100,000 a year income and pay all the tuition for students going to school. Instead, it goes to these greedy bankers. We are much better off without a federal government. Much, much better off. It would be an automatic end to all wars. It would be an automatic end to the IRS, which takes $600 billion a year from paychecks, and that money is needed for survival. I read these articles on Bitcoin so I can tell you about these things. The interference by government is not welcome. It is an impedance. We will progress much faster without governments. Every regulation favors corporations. It's pure fascism. You have seen the salaries of CEOs climb much faster than the wages of the workers. That's fascism. They wind up with everything and we wind up with nothing. Homeless, just like Jefferson said. Homeless on the land that their forefathers fought for and died for. You see, a Chinese communist government cracked down in Tiananmen Square on the students who wanted freedom, murdering 10,000 of them in one night, executing thousands more afterwards. In the U.S., you see the government cracking down on people who trade in Bitcoin. Here we have a wonderful invention. Allows money to be moved over the internet practically for free. And the government cracks down like a communist party, cracking down on the freedoms. And now in Russia, they're cracking down on websites that are bringing the future, enabling Russians to compete in a world that is more and more dominated by a handful for their own benefit. And so the article reads, meanwhile, the affected websites such as btcsec.com and bitcoinconf.ru, which contain information whose dissemination is considered illegal in the country, filed an appeal vowing to fight the ruling. The people have to fight for freedom because the thugocracy has total control of everything in Russia. The people of Russia can bring down these oligarchs, these thugs, by spreading the truth. And the internet helps, but it is being controlled and censored. And closing down websites that have something to do with Bitcoin is proof of the censorship by government. And they do the same thing here. They have very clever ways of censoring the internet. I put out a video, it gets 1,000 views a day. Obviously, the people want to see it. And then suddenly it trickles to 8 views per day. From 1,000 views a day to 8 views a day, what do you call that? I call it censorship. I call it control by the fascists. And as long as I live, I'm going to be speaking out against censorship, against government control, fascism, communism, and the concentration of power into the hands of fewer and fewer. Obscene incomes by a few who do little good for society, while the people who create the wealth have it snatched from them right out of their paycheck. This is wrong. This needs to change. And so we must speak out. Most people are not articulate enough to speak out. They're not sophisticated enough to make videos. They can't push record and record their own voice. They can't write anything to say, but they need to, because our freedom and our future depend upon it. I believe they have the cleverness to do it. They're just lazy, and they're being dumbed down with fluoride in the water, and that's partly why it's there. They want to control the people. Stalin used fluoride to control those that he put in prison. Adolf Hitler controlled those that he put into concentration camps. Fluoride destroys the brain. It lowers IQ. It destroys the body. It attacks every part of the body. Bones, teeth, processes, liver, kidney, heart. It is rat poison. How much rat poison do you want in your drinking water? Next paragraph. The Russian Bitcoin community achieved a victory in May when a court in Yekaterinburg overturned the previous ruling. However, on May 27th, Roskomnadzor again blocked access to bitnovosti.com, one of Russia's most popular Bitcoin news resources, while the other affected websites remained blocked. Bitnovosti wrote on its page on the Russian social networking site VKontakte. And then there's a quote, the proposed law to ban information on cryptocurrency is expected to pass in the Duma soon. Thus blocking all Bitcoin resources is only a matter of time. This is backward. This is not moving forward into the future. This is crippling business, giving an advantage to foreigners. These people are idiots. By the way, that quote was a prediction, and the next paragraph undoes it. The prediction may now prove to be incorrect in light of the latest positive and unexpected turn of events. Oh, they figured it out. Next week, all eyes will be on the Bank of Russia as the country's Bitcoin community may finally receive a clear ruling and a green light from the Russian government. If Bitcoin gets the go-ahead, Max Keiser says we may have him to thank. And then there's a quote, without quotation marks. I think I have convinced Russia that Bitcoin is equivalent to gold and that CBR, the Central Bank of Russia, should be loading up on Bitcoin. Max Keiser, June 11th, 2015. Then they have 3 articles at the bottom that you can read. I'm going to give you the link in the video description so you can read those 3 articles as well as the article I just read. It's a very interesting statement that Max Keiser makes. Bitcoin is equivalent to gold. I think what he means is a cryptocurrency that is decentralized, if unimpeded and not regulated to death, will have more value to businesses than pure gold. Gold is one, not scarce. There is so much of it in the earth that we have not yet discovered because gold is heavy and it goes to the bottom. If a ship at sea wrecks, what happens to the gold? It goes to the bottom of the ocean. Not the top of the ocean, the bottom of the ocean. And if a meteor loaded with gold were to crash into the earth, where would the gold be? It would be a mile down, perhaps. When that meteor hits the earth, everything would turn liquid from the heat of the kinetic energy converting to heat. And the heaviest stuff would go to the bottom. If there was any ice in that meteor, it would be on top. Gold weighs 19 times as much as ice. And so this idea that gold is rare, it's rare on the surface of the earth. Aluminum is plentiful because it's lightweight. But gold will go to the bottom in any meteor impact. And so you're going to have veins of gold. And we know from cold fusion that nuclear reactions can take place at room temperature, and that some of the products are metals like silver, gold, magnesium. There were about 16 metals found in the test tubes, which means that you can fuse nuclei. You can put together hydrogens, heavy hydrogens, and form heavier elements. And that may be how they're formed, not in supernovas. So gold is not scarce enough. It's too clunky. It's easily confiscated by governments and thieves. If you go through the airport with gold in your luggage, it will be gone. The TSA will steal it. Why will they steal it? Because it's there. And one of the perks they're given is they get to steal whatever they want as long as they put their finger up your ass. Because the people are being conditioned for a totalitarian state. And putting the finger up your ass and touching your private parts is part of the humiliation. And they picked the airport because it's the ideal place. You don't have time to screw around. You need to get on that plane. Otherwise, you lose $1,000, the price of the ticket. And so you'll put up with any bullshit to get on that fucking plane. And we have to complain loudly every day about the TSA. We don't need to have the TSA looking for terrorists because the terrorists are all in government. And I'm not talking about the fools, clowns, and jugglers that you think you elected. They are not the government. They are clowns, fools, and jugglers. They are put there to make you think you elected them. It's a bullshit system. The real government are the fascists who own and control everything. And if you trace the money trail back, follow the yellow brick road, it leads back to the Federal Reserve and the big banks that they own and control, and the 147 corporations that they dominate and take down 60% of world profits. We have a handful of people taking all the profit in the world virtually. This has to end, and it's only going to end if people know about it. There are two sides to be on. You can either be part of the revolutionary crowd trying to overturn this power structure, or you can do nothing and help them. And that means that your future is bleak. And if you have any family, their future is bleak. We must have our freedoms back, and we must reduce the size of government to zero whenever possible. They control everything, every permit, every driver's license, every passport. They control everything. Those are your slave papers. They control the courts, the judges, the politicians. They have it all sewn up. You are in prison in your own home, and you're about to lose your home because they're intending to take everything from everyone. They're going to take all the pensions and all the bank accounts, and people who are expecting a monthly check won't get it. They want to reduce world population to 500 million, which means killing 13 out of 14 members of your family, and you might be among the dead. So if you choose sides and you choose the wrong side, your future is bleak. I cannot depend on YouTube to distribute my videos. I put out a video on Planet X recently. It gets about 1,000 views a day. You would think that my average would go up by 1,000 a day. It has gone down. It's as if someone said, keep him under 20,000 views a day. They figure it's safe that way. And so the fight has to be picked up by each individual. If every one of you had a Facebook account or a Twitter or LinkedIn or Google Plus or 211 others, and you had just 10 followers or 10 associates, 10 links to other people, and you put out one message of truth every day to those 10 people, we could have billions and billions of information bouncing around between us. Just find something truthful and send it out, and we can win. Oil deals in the past have been traded with US dollars. It was mandatory. That's how much power and control these thugs had. And the world is now turning against the petrodollar. They're turning against US treasuries because if there is no petrodollar requirement, then there's no need for US treasuries. The US treasuries is what they held in order to have dollars to trade for oil. How much business is done every day in oil? There are 87 million barrels a day used. And at $100 a barrel, just a rough figure, I'm not trying to get too precise here by getting today's price for a barrel of oil. At $100 a barrel, how much money is that? If that money were injected into Bitcoin for oil trade deals, What would that do to the price of Bitcoin? There's one thing you must understand about Bitcoin. There's a limited supply, and so whatever capital is injected into Bitcoin, it's divided by the same small number, which currently is 14.2 million Bitcoins. And there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins, according to the original plan of this fictional character, Satoshi Nakamoto. And so if you have trillions and trillions of dollars chasing 14 million Bitcoins, what will the price be? The price is always the capital divided by the quantity. Always. There's no other way to do it. It's the capital injected divided by the total number of Bitcoins. The price of one Bitcoin could go to $1 million. Somebody actually figured out something I think is valuable here. If 1% of bank deposits, 1% of bank deposits were to go into Bitcoin, the price of each Bitcoin would be $750,000. And today you can buy Bitcoins for $230. Every nation will eventually use Bitcoin as their national currency. It's taking place right now in Venezuela. Because people who hold their money in bolivars have lost in the recent past 60% of value in 1 month. Do you see the need for Bitcoin? It is much more stable, and anyone who converts their bolivar to Bitcoin will see the price moving up naturally. I know the oligarchs of the world, the big banks and the Federal Reserve have an incentive to keep Bitcoin price down, but the natural tendency for Bitcoin is to rise up. And so every time they beat it down, it comes right back up. And it's everything they can do. They're printing money as fast as they can to buy those Bitcoins from individuals where it doesn't count and sell them on the open market where it does count in order to keep the price low. They are manipulating the price of Bitcoin, keeping it low. It's artificially low. So what did the Russians and the Chinese do when gold was held low, artificially low? They bought all they could, and they drained the West of gold. The West has no gold, and Russia and China have together 40,000 tons of gold. And with that, they intend to take over the world. They're working together to defeat those who control the U.S. And so the race is on. But Bitcoin enters the picture, and now gold and a gold-backed security isn't that important anymore. Let me read this again. I think I have convinced Russia that Bitcoin is equivalent to gold and that the Central Bank of Russia should be loading up on BTC, Bitcoins. That's Max Keiser. Max Keiser is a genius in financial things, an absolute genius in financial things. And if he says that Bitcoin is equivalent to gold, what he's saying is if you stack up all the benefits of gold and all the benefits of Bitcoin, they are equal. And I think that gold will, first of all, be discovered in great quantity deep in the earth, and that is going to kill the price of gold. Governments will confiscate gold, and that will also kill the price of gold. And when gold money flees to Bitcoin, and the banks start charging people for borrowing their money through deposits, that money will flee to Bitcoin also. Max Keiser says Bitcoin is equivalent to gold, suggesting that it's a safe haven for capital. And I say, as long as governments have your password, nothing in this society is safe. We need to put an end to this government taking your passwords, and we're not going to get it through legislation or voluntary action on the part of those who control everything. The only way we're going to get it is if computer programmers and cryptographers can figure out how to keep the government out of our private financial affairs. And they are working on that around the clock because they know that's important. That's the key to freeing the slaves. Max Keiser says Bitcoin is equivalent to gold. And now Russia is taking heed of Max Keiser's advice. And I say there might be intelligence in Russia after all. By the way, Putin did play a very clever hand against Obama. Obama looked like the world's biggest fool in foreign affairs. And I think it was intentional. I think the objective here is to weaken the USA so it can be taken over completely. And they put Obama in the White House in order to achieve this, because this man is pure evil. He is the worst thing that ever happened to America. His actions have been very destructive to our Constitution and our freedoms. We need to repeal the Patriot Act and remove all these federal laws from the states. And the best way to do that is secession. That fires everybody and removes all these government agencies that do not work for the people. They work for the thugocracy. So Bitcoin might see another victory when Russia reverses their position, in spite of what Putin said that Bitcoin is a CIA plot. I don't know how he could say that. He is certainly intelligent enough to know that that is not possible. This was done by someone who despises the central bank system and the counterfeiting of money by the Federal Reserve and the pressure that they exerted against other countries to make them counterfeit their currency. They have total control of the European Union, and there's a guy at the head of the Euro, Draghi, head of the European Central Bank, who was not elected, yet he's making decisions. This is totalitarian, this is fascism, this is Nazism. The sanctions against Russia were designed to kill the German economy, and so they're being rejected. I don't agree with sanctions. We used them against Cuba for 50 years. Did they work? They did not work. We would have been better off, and they would have been better off if we had free trade. The sanctions did not help, and the people there earn an average of $19 per month. Fidel Castro lived high on the hog. It was the people who suffered, and that's the way it always is. When elephants fight, the ants are the ones who get crushed. Reduce power to those who have it. Distribute the power equally. That's the fair way to structure this world. When those who try to concentrate power make their proposal, recognize it as a concentration of power. You know that power corrupts, and so we don't want to give too much power to anybody. Bitcoin yanks the power from the central banks. You can't print counterfeit Bitcoins. The creator of Bitcoin came up with a way to limit the supply and not allow anyone to have the third-party control that we see with the banking system. And so someone sent $5 million through Bitcoin, and it cost them 4 cents. If they sent $5 million through the banking system, it would cost $250,000. And so you see, everyone must convert to Bitcoin because it's cheaper. And the price of Bitcoin right now is artificially low at $230. Today is June 11th, 2015. And people talk about buying gold and buying silver as if we're still living in the Middle Ages or 6,000 years ago when they claim there was a society that traded in gold. They tell us that gold is 6,000 years old. Do you want to use the tools that are 6,000 years old? Do you want to use the communication devices that are 6,000 years old? Bitcoin is the modern way to hold your wealth. You have a chance of keeping it, but you really have to know about wallets. And there are risks in Bitcoin, but there are risks in gold and silver. The biggest risk to all of them is government. If government calls in the gold and the silver, and I am sure that they will, whatever you have will be swapped for more of their paper, and they will decide how much you get. I heard they're only going to give $20 for each ounce of gold. That's what they paid last time, a little over $20, and as soon as they had all the gold, they almost doubled the price to $35. They don't have to give you anything. They can order you to turn it in on the threat of murdering you if you don't, because that's what Nazis, communists, and totalitarians do. And so look into Dark Wallet and try your best to be anonymous when you purchase Bitcoin. Amir Taki, Taaki, Amir, the first name, Amir. Look up his name and read about him. He has been at the forefront of Bitcoin from day one. The first face I saw when I started to attach a face to Bitcoin was Amir Taki. He's a genius, I believe. But the people from Iran are super intelligent to start with. They did a study to see where the most intelligent people on earth are from. And it turned out Eastern Asia as a general region. Eastern Asia would include India, Pakistan, Iran. These are clever people. I have worked with Iranians. The greatest leader I ever saw was an Iranian. I worked in Redondo Beach, California, in finance. The owner had a real estate company and finance. He was the greatest leader I ever saw. I respect the Iranian people. They are sitting on a lot of oil, and that oil is coveted by those who steal things like oil and gold. And those same people deal in heroin and cocaine. They are no good to this planet. We need to expose them, reveal what they have done, and put everyone on guard to watch out for them. I'm not aware of any single name to identify them. They like to work through puppets. They put Obama up there so that he can take all the blame, and when you get tired of him, they put in a replacement for him, and it will probably be Hillary Clinton in 2016, or Jeb Bush, or someone else that they handpick to serve them as puppet. And all the foolish Americans will go to the polls and vote and think they elected somebody, The elections are all rigged. They put in whoever they want, and they tell you that the constitutional candidate was not popular. Imagine that. The Constitution is not what we want. We don't want freedoms and rights. We don't want a severely limited government. And people believe this. So if you're going to work toward your own freedom, Amir Taki and Dark Wallet are topics to look into. Learn everything you can about Bitcoin because cryptocurrency is here, and most of them are not worth much. Litecoin has been losing market share to Bitcoin. It used to be 30 Litecoins for one Bitcoin. Now it's like 130 to 1, and it's been steadily declining. I don't think Litecoin will make it, nor will the other 200 cryptocurrencies make it, and putting money into them seems like throwing money out the window. Many of the cryptocurrencies are scams because they have an infinite number that they can produce. They are just like the central banks who print money ad infinitum and then go out and spend it, buying themselves anything they want, living like parasites off the rest of us. Most cryptocurrencies are not worth anything. And one last idea I'll leave you with. If you were to take the fiat currencies of the world, they're all fiat currencies at this time. Soon they might be backed by gold, but today they're all fiat currencies. If you were to take each one of them and convert them into dollars, the total value of all those currencies of the world would only be $24.51. And Bitcoin is worth almost 10 times that. So Bitcoin already is the most valuable currency in the world. And as soon as they start trading oil in Bitcoins, the price will soar, because there are only 14 million of them, 14.2 as of today. When the auto industry starts using Bitcoins, there will be demand for Bitcoins. When countries like Venezuela convert to Bitcoin because their currency is devaluing at the rate of sometimes 60% in a single month, I see Bitcoin being used. I see governments trying to control it, regulate it to death, and that's a threat. So don't think that this is a risk-free conversion. Bitcoin is equivalent to gold, is what Max Keiser says, and what it might mean is that gold has risks of government confiscation, and Bitcoin has government risks also. If they have your password, they can take your Bitcoins. What we have to get control of is government. All the cameras are on us. We need to turn all the cameras on them, and we're not going to be able to do that by installing them like they did. What we're going to have to do is report what they're doing. Each one of us is like a camera reporting what they're up to. Find the truth and spread the truth, and their entire empire will collapse. And that's where I want to leave it on this June 11th, 2015. Thanks for watching. Russia expected to legalize Bitcoin peer-to-peer transactions. I did my regular advanced search on Google for Bitcoin articles written in the past 24 hours. Today is June 11th, and this article was written today. I will provide you the link to both this article and the search that I do using Google's advanced search. I found the article on the Cointelegraph, Future of Money. I read this page because they don't put pop-ups like CoinDesk does. Many articles appear on the first page, and I click on them without realizing it's CoinDesk, and I get a pop-up and I close the window. I don't read the article. So don't waste your time opening CoinDesk articles. If you do a search and see that the article appears on CoinDesk, just skip it. The author of today's article is Alan Scott. He has a caricature drawing of the president, Medvedev, or whatever his name is, and Putin, Vladimir Putin, the prime minister. Two thugs in a thugocracy. When I read the history of the Russian leaders, it was clear that it's an oligarchy run by tough guys like the mafia. Putin was in the KGB, and the first thing he did when he became president after Yeltsin and Gorbachev is he undid as many of the reforms as he could because he felt that splitting up the Soviet Union was a terrible mistake. He wants to put it all back together again. He poisoned two leaders. In the Ukraine, Viktor something, Chenkov or something like that, I can't remember his name, disfigured his face. He survived, but he poisoned the president of Georgia, and he died. I think the name is Yushchenkov in the Ukraine. Viktor Yushchenko. Bitcoin came out in thought in 2005, in a white paper in 2009, and most of the world that knows about it today learned about it in March, April of 2013. That's when I heard about it, March 28th, 2013, from Stefan Molyneux. And for 3 weeks, I studied it intensely. I felt I knew more than most people about Bitcoin, but there is so much to know. You need to know how to avoid being hacked by skilled hackers. And the more valuable these coins become, the more important that will be. So that's what I'm studying today. But I also want to know what's going on politically, because there is a big risk if governments decide to kill or over-regulate Bitcoin. Government has proven itself to be an obstacle to progress. Oligarchs trying to maintain control over everything so that they wind up with everything, all the wealth in the world, and we the people wind up with shit. And a lot of people are recognizing this and awakening to that fact and joining the revolution to overturn them. And so a war has broken out, undeclared, us against them. We have 7.3 billion, and if everybody knows what's going on, they're finished. Bitcoin is a very important part of it because it's decentralized. It's not anonymous because they make you give so much information, they know exactly who's buying the coins. An interesting article I read recently is about dark wallet. I think everybody should look that term up and read about it, because these guys, Amir Taki and another guy who dropped out of law school, I can't remember his name, but he dropped out of law school and said he's going to become a revolutionary because he sees the need to dispose of these pricks that are in control of everything, because the scale is being heavily weighted in their favor. And we are winding up with less and less and less every year. They're forming monopolies and charging an arm and a leg for the basics. They have 147 companies that control all the wealth and take 60% of the profits from the 43,000 companies on the capital market. They're mostly banks, all owned by a core of greedy people who think that we are their slaves. But as the word is passed around, we gain ground. And what we want is a fair system, and we cannot have it if power is concentrated into the hands of a few. And they're trying to yoke us all into one United Nations so that we have nothing to say about what they decide. And what they will decide is to take more and more. There's no limit to human greed. Medvedev, or whatever his name is, and Putin are not our friends. But there's an Arab expression that says, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Putin opposes this power center, but he also cooperates with them for world domination. A short time ago, Putin said that Bitcoin was a CIA creation. The CIA is not clever enough to come up with anything this ingenious. The CIA certainly would not come up with a cryptocurrency that does not involve this handful of people that own and control everything. From what I can see, the CIA has only one modus operandi, and that's to run a drill, set off an explosion, kill thousands of innocent people, and blame it on a fictional terrorist group. They run that same program over and over again, and the people are beginning to catch on. More and more whistleblowers are turning on their despotic rulers because